Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to the fourth panel discussion in our series, The World Awakens, where we hear from a lineup of experts on the challenges and benefits of managing and building distributed teams. I'm David Holland from Employment Hero, where I focus on helping our clients manage their businesses in the new normal of distributed teams. The World Awakens series has been designed to explore the opportunities and challenges of managing distributed employment, because we believe that in order to be able to succeed in a remote first world, those businesses that really embrace the benefits and take on the challenges of distributed teams will achieve better outcomes for both their businesses as well as employees. They'll also be creating a more sustainable long-term future. As usual, we have Julia with us today in the background, who will be helping us curate questions and answers. So please add your questions to using the button on the screen. I now have the pleasure of introducing our panelists for today. First up is Jamie Finnegan, Global Head of Talent for Finder. Jamie has extensive experience working with top Australian startups to help hire talent, consult on growth strategy, and advise on company values and culture. He's passionate about creating a work environment in which everyone feels comfortable, valued, and empowered. Jamie is currently responsible for the growth of Finder's team across the globe, whilst also designing and driving business initiatives to further enhance Finder's unique culture. Also up today, Vanvisa Brown who's the head of demand generation and growth marketing at DiviPay, a fintech startup backed by ANZi, which is the VC arm of ANZ Bank. DiviPay is an all-in-one virtual corporate card and expense management platform, and Vanvisa's role requires her to work closely with the go-to-market and cross-functional teams to hit monthly and quarterly targets. From her experience, Van will be sharing her view on how she keeps cross-functional team members aligned to achieve the growth targets without having to be in the office every day. And also, Van is formerly of the Alliance Group, of which Employment Hero is part, and we've had the pleasure of working together many years ago. So welcome, Jamie and Vanvisa. I don't know if you guys can turn your cameras on. Terrific, thanks guys, welcome. So today's topic is around alignment and achieving performance and keeping teams on track to achieve goals. Why is that important in a remote and hybrid environment? Well, obviously we don't have the physical oversight. We're no longer able to see our teams and watch them at their desks. And so we're relying on professional skills and on professionals and their skills to stay productive. But we also need to keep an eye on that everyone's on the same track, and we're working towards the ultimate business goals. And I guess from an employee's perspective, in the absence of those water cooler moments and impromptu check-ins whilst you're passing a desk, we need to make sure our teams are actually more reliant on us to make sure that we provide a clear vision and clarity around what it is that we're trying to achieve as a business. So hopefully today's discussion will help us explore and understand how we manage that. But as usual, we usually start these sessions with, in order to explore and understand what distributed teams actually means to people and different experiences. So as usual, I'll ask you guys to perhaps share a little bit about your business and where you are on your own journeys towards distributed. And perhaps Jamie, I'll start with you, if you can walk us through the approach at Finder.
Nice one, cheers Dutchy. So yeah, for those who haven't heard of Finder before, we are Australia's most visited comparison website, comparing everything from credit cards to cryptocurrency. We've been around for 15 years in various forms, originally just comparing credit cards and adding more to that. So now comparing over 100 different categories in over 100 different markets around the world. We've, I guess, born in Australia, now present in 7 countries that we have an office in, and crew in over 20 of those 20 countries as well. We've been largely remote for a long time, pretty much since the beginning of the business. So the distributed crew, as we call them at Finder, we had probably 40% of the whole business who were actually fully remote before COVID happened. So yeah, very lucky in that sense that we had a lot of practices and principles and kind of the rituals, ways of working and systems and things that were set up to support that. So yeah, we're very fortunate in that sense. So it wasn't too heavily impacted. I'm sure, obviously, everyone was impacted somewhat by the whole pandemic and likely still is. But the the working ways for a lot of the people, very fortunately for them, hadn't changed too much because of the pandemic, and we were able to obviously shift a lot of the people who hadn't been used to working in that way, and hadn't been working fully remote previously into that. That did come with obviously its own intricacies, people not used to working from home and having to adjust to that, and making sure that obviously the well-being and the productivity and other things and pieces were in place as well for people, making sure that they were safe working from home, making sure they had the facilities and everything they needed to do that as well. And obviously making sure that, you know, you mentioned the water cooler moments that you miss out on, making sure that those kind of conversations and the discussions and generally the communication across the business was also heightened during that time, to make sure that people were still equally as informed, if not more so, than they were before the pandemic. And yeah, glad to say we've certainly taken some of the learnings from that period, and now run a bit of a hybrid way as we were previously. But I think we've hopefully improved a lot of the practices for people who are fully remote and those who haven't been used to previously being able to do so.
Yeah. So Jamie, before March last year, before the first shutdowns, how many people were working at Finder?
Yeah. So sorry, I forgot to mention all that. So yeah, 4 years ago we were a 100-person company. We are now 545 currently as it stands, made up of full-time, part-time, direct employees, contractors, whatever it may be. So yeah, there's 545 crew in Finder at the moment.
Yeah, so you've 5x from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic.
Yeah, for the last 4 years we've 5x'd, but yeah, I think through that time we've stayed pretty steady as well, and actually managed to increase headcount numbers during the pandemic as well, which is something pretty rare, I believe. But yeah. And
Jamie, you mentioned that you already had some of the team were already working on a distributed basis, and you said you had some of the tools and processes already in place. Is there anything that's really top of mind that you think you were particularly grateful or reliant on that really gave you a bit of a head start? Is there anything comes to mind as being preeminent?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of the practices of, you know, people perhaps in the past hadn't been used to. I know, speaking to people at other companies, for example, becoming a habit of, you know, recording the catch-ups and being able to share them and doing that over video and having people join over Zoom, having the communities in Slack and having areas to share and discuss things. I think they were all pretty commonplace for Finder, very fortunately, before the pandemic. And throughout that time, like I say, we worked on heightening that and increasing that level of engagement through there as well. Obviously trying to, I think Zoom fatigue has become a term that's used nowadays. I think we were trying to obviously lessen that, but make sure that all of the information was still flowing through in the right channels at the right time to the crew. Yeah. So there was things that we used for, you know, whether it was people getting the swag on their first day and being used to sending that to people remotely, or making sure the tech setups were all schmick and ready to go from day one, and on all those kind of things that I think they stood us in good stead when we were onboarding new people and bringing new people into the business throughout the pandemic as well. Yeah,
certainly onboarding and that induction, that real bringing people into your organisation culturally as well as legally. I think we've got a session coming up on that later, how to do that remotely. But what I really heard there was the sharing and collaboration tools that you were using, and obviously the communication in terms of recording those sessions and making sure everyone had the ability to access that. Terrific, thanks very much. And Van, you're at a slightly different stage. You're probably where Finder were 5 years ago. You're in a high growth business. Can you tell us a little bit about your setup at the moment?
Yeah, so DiviPay is an all-in-one spend management solution. So the finance team is able to issue instant virtual corporate card to employees who are on the field or need to spend money. And the finance team can set all the rules and restrict how that money can be spent. Employees can also send the invoices to the platform from anywhere they are, and just approve it on the platform, and the money just the invoices get transferred to finance team, and finance team just process it. So far the business processed more than $50 million in transaction volume. So all that, we only have a team of 14 today. I joined the business in January. I was the employee number 10. So basically up until end of last year, they only had 9 people, and we have already this year hired more than 50% of the workforce in our business in less than half a year. In terms of the working arrangement we have at DiviPay, We have one head of accounting who works up in Queensland, and we have the rest of the team in Sydney. We work in the office 3 days a week and working from home 2 days a week. But it's quite flexible if you need to be working from home because you are not feeling well, or you just have some engagement that you need to do at home, then anyone can just basically let everyone know. We have a Slack channel for office hours, so we don't need to basically send a message to everyone. We just in the morning, we just put a message up there, say, I'm working from home today, or I'm going to be in the office for half a day. So everyone's sort of aware of where everyone is about throughout the week. In terms of how we keep each other aligned, we use a number of tools, but we have like quite a strict meeting cadence throughout the week. It's really, really important that everyone stick to this, and it doesn't matter whether it's the go-to-market strategy meeting, or it's a stand-up in the morning, or it is a weekly kickoff. You can be anywhere you are. You just have to turn up and participate in those meetings.
Yeah. So sorry, you've got one member that's completely remote, based in Queensland.
He's came in when he has some meeting engagement in Sydney. He would fly in, but otherwise he's actually based in Queensland.
Terrific, yeah, and so the rest are in a hybrid, part-time, part work from home, part work from the office.
Yep.
With a high degree of flexibility, which is,
Yep.
I think, quite a common model of where we're at. So that's that. And sorry, Jamie, just can you let us know, where do you have offices?
Yeah, sure. So, the first office, I guess, is in Sydney. We've then grown into New York, London, Toronto, Auckland, Manila, and Wrocław. I know I'm going to butcher that, but it's in Poland. So yeah, we've got 7 at the moment. We do also have a small office in Adelaide, and there's a new one launching in the US soon as well. So yeah, we'll have 9 soon.
I'm going to ask you a question. You may not have the data to hand, but would you know off the top of your head roughly what proportion of your workforce is not within an hour of an office somewhere?
No, but that is a good question. I should know that.
But there are employees who aren't within commuting distance.
100%. So, like I said, 40% of the crew are fully remote, as in they don't work in an office.
Okay.
So they would be probably more than an hour away, I'd imagine. And even some of the crew, for example, who are regularly visiting the office in, say, New York, they may live in upstate New York, or other people in the UK may live in different parts, other than London. So they may live a bit further away as well.
So they don't commute. Yeah. Okay. And I think that's really good context, because we get a lot of questions every week about how do I manage the people who are on a site, and obviously construction, hospitality, manufacturing, some areas of healthcare. A lot of our listeners and our clients at Employment Hero don't have the ability to provide that flexibility, work from anywhere, that some of their employees and their teams are required to be at a site specific hours. So we know that that's a real challenge, and I guess you've got some elements of that with your engineering and stuff. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that background on those businesses. Great to have 2 such diverse businesses. Let's jump into today's in-depth topic, which is really around how we maintain productivity. And Van, you've already talked about it with your high growth teams. And how do we get people aligned? And what does it look like? What tools are you using? I specifically want to start out perhaps by asking about metrics. Metrics is something that gets talked a lot about in fast growth business, whether they're KPIs or OKRs, which is objectives and key results. I want to have a little chat about that. And so maybe, Jamie, I'll jump back to you. Can you walk us through the approach at Finder? What do you do around setting goals? Sure.
So I'll talk about it from both kind of ends of the spectrum, from the business's perspective, and then from the individual's perspective in the business as well. So yeah, from a company perspective, we have kind of a mission and a 5-year vision. Each year, financial year, we have a set of strategic goals, 4 or 5 kind of key areas of focus that we're going to work on to push towards achieving that 5-year vision. We then have a set of OKRs per crew that would feed into that. So, for example, the engineering crews, the people and culture crews, the client services crews would all have a group set of OKRs, and breaking that then down into what they're actually going to do to feed into those strategic goals as well. from a individual's perspective, obviously there's an individual development plan set out for every person in the business as well. And we try and obviously align as best we can that person's personal development and their goals for themselves, as long with align with the finder's company goals too. There's a large spreadsheet with every team and crew's goals on there as well, which are all aligned, like I say, to a strategic mission within Finder, and they're also there for everyone to see. So there's full transparency across, for example, the OKRs of the talent team, for example, and the crews in engineering or product, whatever it may be. So we can kind of see how our own work then interlinks with the other people, and how that can, I guess, feed in together. That also creates opportunities for collaboration on some of those things. And some of the one crews that we actually build, or people call them squads or tribes of the companies, we obviously have a value of one crew, so we align that to there, and have the one crews that we form are often not within engineering or product or whatever it may be. It could be a project that pushes towards achieving one of the specific goals as well that sits outside of that. So that's how we kind of devise those and help to make sure that people are across those as well, and also gives the opportunity for people to, cross collaborate through different teams as well, and be able to share, I guess, what they're working on. There's regular updates on those weekly AU huddle, and we have we call it UTTR reports up and to the right. We have a UTTR report that goes around every week for Australia and each of the country that we're operational into, and that has kind of the OKRs built into that as well. So they're really just baked into the whole process of day-to-day work, and they're taken from, again, like I say, a strategic lens of the business and a day-to-day operational executional play as well.
Yeah, terrific. And off the top of your head, in terms of key results, so for those who aren't familiar with OKRs, it's objectives and key results. Quite often the objective is, I don't want to say a soft objective, but the objective in my mind is a plain English, plain language, very clear place that you want to get to. And then the key results are, how do we know how successful we are in achieving that objective? When will we know that we've reached that objective? Is that how you guys use them?
Yeah, it's like, if you liken it to a strategy and a tactic, for example, the strategy would be the O and the KR would be the tactic. So it's almost like, here's the goal and here's how we achieve that goal. So it's breaking down the problem into bite-sized chunks that you can really, the scoring system is a 1 or a 0. Did you achieve that or not in that time? Okay. We've worked on, splitting that up into quarters and then into trimesters as well, and aligning those. So yeah, it's really just a way of simplifying. Say the problem statement is there, same as you would do with product, and then breaking it down to the actual requirements to build to get to that as well.
Yeah, terrific. Well, thanks for that. And Van, again, mentioned your high growth business, and you're responsible for delivering and ensuring that growth is achieved. What are the main tools that you use to monitor and measure that growth, and how do you keep the team aligned on that?
Yeah, we have a North Star metric at DiviPay that everyone will just need to, we look at North Star metrics and how we're tracking every week at the all hands. We also basically try to look at the mission, whatever we're trying to do, we just like go back to what is our company mission and what are we doing each day to help the business achieve that mission. We also have the company OKRs, which break down into different part of the business and how we're going to get to the North Star metric faster. And each OKR, however, will not be achieved just by one team. So it is very, very interesting that we all have to be aligned and everyone is responsible for all of our 5 OKRs company-wide. We break down into quarterly OKRs, and we work on a 2-week sprint to make sure that everyone's catch up. We know what our tasks are, how we're tracking, so we are not missing each other in terms of hitting goals. For example, sales team, marketing team, and product team might have individual goals, but at the end of the day, we're trying to achieve the same results. And if we are not working together on the same timeline, we might miss each other's goals and might cause some roadblocks between each teams. So it is important that we actually check in on a regular basis in terms of like how we're tracking and what is our role in achieving each OKR And we just need to make sure that those are breaking down in terms of task and also the timeline, so we can actually follow each other in the different sprints.
Awesome. Question to both of you. Are the OKRs for individual teams and individual team members, are they transparent across the business? Can it, yeah? Then what are you using? How do you do that?
So we have the OKR on the wall, and we also have it on Confluence. Right. We also have it available for everyone to check in, and all of the OKR owners update their key results and how we're tracking on Confluence, and it's being shared across business. In terms of everyone's role, we also making sure that we communicate with the team leaders and also OKR owners to make sure that we track that we document the progress of our achievement on a weekly and also monthly basis.
Yeah, okay. And Jamie, how do you track and how do you share?
Yeah, similar. As I mentioned, there's kind of the financial year, kind of 4 or 5 has been the last couple of years, the goals and the kind of key pillars, I guess, that we're pushing towards to achieve that vision for the future. That's on posters and confluences and all over the place. So everyone kind of can see that constantly. It's in each week's kind of, as I mentioned, the UTTR reports that go out. And yeah, full transparency, there's a link there to Google Sheets, which is also in Confluence. And we actually have a biz ops or a program management team, I guess, as well, who work with the functions to make sure that they've designed those OKRs correctly. They feed into a narrative that we've spoken about, and that they're actually, yeah, I guess they're being tracked correctly. They're you know, if there's a roadblock, that they're being kind of helped to navigate that as well as a function or as a crew. So, but yes, there's full transparency for everyone to see each other's and other people's in the business too.
Yeah, terrific. Look, I'm actually going to share the way we do it at Employment Hero, because I think there's some strong alignment there. I notice we're all using, and you're both using strongly engineering-led tools. A lot of the tools you mentioned often are associated with technology and engineering capabilities. But yeah, a lot like Finder. So we have our mission at Employment Hero, which is to make employment easier and more rewarding for everyone. And that mission has been consistent. Van, I suspect you recall that from your days at our sister companies. So we start with that mission, and everything that we do, we test against whether it actually makes employment easier and more rewarding and is inclusive of everyone. From the mission, we have our BHAG, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal. For us, that's around, we want to help 10 million users love Employment Hero and get a lot out of it. So that's our sort of shining light on the hill that we're all staring at off in the distance. And it's actually our second one. When I arrived in the company 5 years ago, we had to help 10,000 businesses. And I've got to say, at the time, it looked a long, long way off. And I'm pleased to say we're actually there nowadays. So the BHAGs are amazing for a fast growth company. They look a long way away when you set them, but you come up to them very quickly. So we've got our mission and our big, hairy, audacious goal. And from that, we use OKRs as a methodology. So we actually tend to set sort of 3-year, 1-year OKR and quarterly OKRs at a company and business level. So everybody knows where we want the business to be in terms of objectives and key results 3 years from now, 1 year from now. And then with the quarterly, that's where we start to get down into those teams and individuals. So each team will set their objectives each quarter. Often there are, some people will have heard Ben Thompson in previous episodes talk about our quarterly themes. And we'll often use our OKRs to track those, but even just core business as usual, we'll be throwing that out. And I'm very pleased to say that the methodology and tool that we use is actually embedded in the Employment Hero platform. And so for those of you who don't have engineers and aren't in technology businesses, may not be familiar with some of the platforms like Confluence and the like, for clients of Employment Hero, the OKR tool is actually in there, and it's set as a very hierarchical cascading. So you can actually start at the top with the company goal and set them down and track them. And we've got dashboards, red, amber, green dashboards and dials. So for those of you, I think Jules has actually posted in the chat a link to a white paper that we've done around goal setting frameworks using OKRs. So for those of you who are interested in exploring that methodology, you can jump into the chat and there's a link to that. Van, just while I've got you, we've had a question that came into you about the 2-week sprints. And I was conscious that within the first 10 minutes of this conversation, the word cadence came up, and cadence and purposeful and deliberate are sort of two of the recurring themes in these conversations. Just with talk of, maybe you can talk a little bit about cadence and specifically the questions around the 2-week sprints. Do the different functional teams come together, and what do they discuss? What are the agendas? And that question is from Veronica. So thanks to Veronica. Van, can you talk about that?
Yep. At DiviPay, especially like for myself, I have in terms of the weekly meeting cadence, it seems like a lot of meetings, but they're actually very important meetings that we need to attend, especially for myself. So we have a Monday kickoff meeting, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, daily stand-up, actually Friday, daily stand-up, Friday, retro, revenue team meeting, and also all hands. And throughout the week, we also have the weekly sync with team leads. So we can catch up in terms of how we progressing on all the tasks on the sprint. So when it's actually broken down in terms of tasks and sprints, so for example, marketing need to launch a campaign, and the campaign cannot go live. It's a specific functionality being enabled within the product, and the product also have a list of product build that they need to do, but we need to catch up like before the sprint started to let them know that we have a deadline in 3 weeks. We need this is our goal to be able to achieve our revenue and net new org acquisition target. We need to be able to do XYZ, and this task will not be able to happen if product team are not completing all these tasks within the time frame. So it's basically like re-engineer a lot of the work and catch up in terms of like this task need to go into next sprint, or this task needs to go into the following sprint. Yeah. And also the sales teams is pretty much the same. We work on 2-week sprint. For example, if we are doing a webinar, sales team needs to be involved and they need to be doing some calls. They need to help with the content. So we basically put a lot of these tasks into the sprint. So the entire company are visible into what each team Jira bots look like and how it's progressing throughout the sprint.
Yeah. So are your daily stand-ups and your daily huddles all of company, or are they the sales and the engineering, sales and product?
Yeah, it used to be everyone joined the same stand-up, but now it's broken into product engineer, and also the other team is the go-to-market team. Go-to-market team includes sales, marketing, and also head of success, also success team.
Do you have a set agenda every morning? Right, okay, so it follows a format.
Yep, so in terms of the daily stand-up, there are two, because our team is getting quite big now, we only just mentioned 2 things. One is what we have achieved the day before, to the task that we did to help us achieve the target. And also today, what are we going to do to help us achieve the target sooner?
And one last question before I shift to sort of this global approach that we're going to go into. How often do you review the key results? Is that something you hold people accountable to daily, weekly, fortnightly? How often would the key results and the OKRs come up?
Weekly.
Weekly, okay, terrific. And I heard you mention the weekly all hands, which we talked about last week, actually. So Jamie, do you ever remember the last time the entire company was on a single call at Finder?
We actually had a call on Tuesday morning, which is the global 90-day company all hands, which we go over general company updates. I don't know if every single person would have been on that call. I very much doubt it, but we do shift that around at different times as well. And there's obviously the local weekly ones. We had updates from each country. Some were pre-recorded, and the whole thing was recorded. So I know that the engineering team in Poland, for example, when they can't join the Australian time, they actually organise a time to all sit together in a room and watch that in the Polish office or remotely if they're not in there as well. So the people do sit down and watch that together, even if it's not live necessarily. But yeah, it'd be pretty tough, I reckon, to get all 500 plus on the same time, I reckon.
So we've had a question in around how do you manage part-time employees? How do you get a whole company together on a call with part-time? And I think you've kind of addressed that. It's the same with multiple time zones, and so that's a great idea. Where and we've had it with our teams, even though we've only recently, I think we launched our London office about 6 to 9 months ago. But until then, we were all sort of only stretched from Auckland and New Zealand across to probably Malaysia and Vietnam in terms of time zones. So we were all able to get together in the same time zone. But if there was a public holiday somewhere, our team in Ho Chi Minh would arrange to sit down as a group and review the all hands from the previous public holiday that they might have missed. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, making sure that it's available to people even if they can't watch it live, and they've got the full context of everything, and it's all recorded for everyone to watch.
Yeah. So we want to jump into the specific challenges of managing goal setting and performance reviews in a distributed environment. And so, Jamie, I do want to come to you and talk about that a little bit. So are your teams how are your teams arranged? Are they geographically country based, or does that apply to sales, or how does it, and how is the engineering team set up? Are there engineers across the 24 time zones?
Yeah, it's a hybrid and ever evolving structure, I think, at Finder. So we have local country teams, so they tend to be kind of more your client services, more the partnerships functions who are working with clients locally, as well as the teams across publishing and editorial, or the organic content, the paid content, digital marketing, and the PR teams. So that's kind of almost the local teams that report into a local CEO, and obviously then have dotted line interactions with the more globally natured teams, I guess. So we have, the engineering, product design, and data teams are all global in nature, and we have those based in Sydney, New York, London, Poland, and Manila. But they also work on, it's not on a country specific initiative, but they work on engineering or product specific initiatives on the same time zone most of the time, where we can make that work. So that's how we tend to tackle that. In terms of the talent team specifically, we've got people split across Sydney, New York, and London, and Manila at the moment. And they tend to work on tech. We split it up into like tech, non-tech, and they tend to work on that local area. So like APAC, for example, we have obviously Australia and the Philippines. So people work on tech and non-tech roles across those markets if they're based in those areas. So try and keep it local to the time zone. Myself, when I joined Finder, initially there was no one else in the talent team. So I remember kind of trying to do a bit of everything everywhere. I remember I was actually catching up with Fred, our founder, yesterday, having a coffee with him, and he was saying he remembers I think it was my second week in the business, and he kind of said to me, we need to go to New York and hire a role over there for a country manager in the US. Are you ready to go? And I was like, not at all, no. And he was like, cool, we'll go in 3 weeks. So sometimes it's more just going there when you can and doing the stuff. But since obviously COVID and everything, we've had to rethink those things. And I think hopefully, I certainly think we've got better at that. And we're always looking at ways to improve that and what works best for Finder as a business. I think a lot of companies will try and just copy and paste, or cookie cutter approach a lot of those things. And I think you really have to focus on what works for your company. Just because it works for Amazon or Facebook or Google or whoever, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for Finder or for DiviPay or for Employment Hero. So you have to really try and tweak that to what works best for you as a business and for the crew that you're working with.
I'm going to drill in, Jamie, because I know that we often get feedback that people really want that practical advice and sharing of experience. So you're a leader within the Finder business of a global team. You've got your own team distributed across the world. So you mentioned the OKR methodology and that kind of stuff, which is great overarching, but on a practical day-to-day basis, is it about Slacks? If somebody's offline in the States and you need to talk to them, is it about Slack? Is it about arranging a conference call at 7 a.m. in the morning? How do you manage it?
Yeah, look, I think that certainly if you're in the same time zone and that kind of thing, and you're having problems with people being in or out the office, that's probably something that you weren't doing right before COVID. I think that, being an outcomes-based business, the communication piece there, like I said, we were fortunate we had Zoom and Slack, and we've kind of been global from day one. We had all that kind of stuff set up. So we have, like, for example, a people and culture channel, we'll have a talent channel. We have one specifically for the US within talent and US within people and culture. And you kind of have exactly know where you need to be messaging or what to be doing there. If it's on a one-to-one basis, again, it's more just about communication. I think that now more than ever, that communication, however it's delivered, is key. I think it's just about working out what works best for you, and also not always just going to the Australian time zone. For example, I do calls my early morning or my late evening with the team in those markets as well. They don't have to necessarily work to the Australian time zone as well. So I think it's about being flexible with those things and maybe trying to test out what works best as well. Some people prefer to chat early in the morning or late in the evening, so working out on an individual basis what's best there. But yeah, look, if it's something that's going to be sent when someone's asleep, obviously Slack is a lot more appropriate than Zoom for those kind of things. But yeah, where you can, obviously try and keep regular communication, and that FaceTime over Zoom as well is super important where you can.
Yeah, terrific. You've actually touched on one of our other themes that's emerging, which is lead from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
In this environment of distributed teams of digital connection rather than face-to-face, we really are reliant on whether it's a team supervisor, a team lead, managers, or leadership to really set the example. And so, Van, you guys obviously are all in the same time zone and can get together physically in the same place. But I guess, the engineering deliverables, they're complex, they're multifaceted, there's lots of parts. Without getting into the details of product releases and that kind of stuff, what are probably the most valuable practices? They don't have to necessarily be tools, but what are the most valuable processes that you use, that you rely on as a business to keep everyone on track?
With the meeting, cadence is very, very important, and we have a regular sync, of course. Slack channel is I think that, like, I also came from a global business where too many Slack channels and just too many repeated message everywhere. If you're able to consolidate them or basically have a definition of what each channel is supposed to be and use that appropriately, I think it's very important to be, because you need to notify that particular group, or sometimes everyone belongs to all those groups, but those channels will be able to give you that category of the message. This is actually marketing related, this is a product related, or this is a customer facing related, and post those questions or updates in the right channel. When I worked for a global business, it's the same as Jamie. Early meetings and also late evening meetings sometimes had to happen. Also, I'm a working mom. People in my team also quite flexible in terms of not setting the important meetings between 5 to 8 p.m. because I have to go and pick up my kids from the daycare, and I have to actually get them to bed. Sometimes I don't mind catching up with the UK team at 8:30 in the evening, or sometimes I don't mind doing an early morning meetings just before the kids wake up in the morning. So that also gives the flexibility in terms of I can get to work slightly later, or I can leave work before everyone else. And then we still can keep productivity and be transparent in terms of like what's being delivered each day.
Yeah, I wonder if one of the unsung heroes of in terms of tools of distributed working is actually the modern digital calendar that automatically not only can you see your colleagues' availability, but automatically adjusts for time zones. It's fantastic when a meeting comes in your diary at a time that you actually expected it to be, which is great. Van, I want to just touch around governance a little bit, because we're getting a few questions around that. And I know you've had previous experience in a business that was very focused on what was around safety and wellness and well-being and those kind of things, which is governance related. Is there anything particular about distributed in terms of objectives and key results? Is there anything, setting objectives generally? What is there around the governance side of things? One specific question we had is, how do you manage people's well-being at the same time as being OKRs? So OKRs, they set a very transparent, very accountable metric. If people are having a bad week, how do you manage that? How do you hold the people accountable to delivering in a distributed environment?
From my own experience, there are two types of meetings. You catch up with how your OKRs and how your metrics is tracking and how you're performing. And the other meeting is one-on-one, that you can talk through challenges, difficulties, things that happening outside work that may impact your work performance, and things like this is very important. Sometimes it can't be just hearing those stories and also understand and help the individuals get through some of tough times, but sometimes might need to have someone involved or recommend people to go to join a program that might actually help them sort out some of the problems that they don't want to discuss at work, for example. It's basically understand, like the type of meetings you have with your team members, and be able to understand like what to be documented and what not, and all that kind of stuff too. I'm not sure if that's answering your question here.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's a difficult topic. We talked about well-being last week specifically. I think there is this contrast between being highly accountable to transparent goals through KPIs and metrics around OKRs versus understanding that not everyone's 100% all of the time. But you touched on something there, Van, which I'm going to throw back to Jamie, is around performance reviews. You're the leader of talent at Finder, performance, and being able to. You also mentioned very briefly personal development as part of your cascading responsibilities. Where does performance reviews sit within accountability and development for you guys?
Are you talking to kind of tracking performance on an ongoing basis versus a performance review? I'm not sure the terminology for that is.
Oh, so do you run? Do managers and their direct reports run regular annual, quarterly performance reviews? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So in terms of sort of understanding what went right and wrong in the last 12 months.
Yeah, so I've actually got mine coming up soon. Actually, it's the self-review assignment. So it's kind of we have a same way again. We've always done this through a piece of technology that we have, and then an in-person meeting to follow that. So we have kind of still areas set around our 5 core values. So it's essentially talk to your last year and kind of how that fed into the values, and then the manager feeds into that as well. And also then kind of what you enjoyed about last year, what you maybe didn't enjoy as much, what you want to do more in the next year, how we can help you as an individual, any kind of training. And one of our other values is master your craft. So it's again about like, how do you want to use that budget that we allow, and how that kind of, how do you want to use that time and space to better yourself and to learn more. So anyway, the crew member and the manager will both input into that, and then they'll usually meet in person. However, obviously some of that has been remote, unfortunately, for the last while. But look, I think the pre-work that's done there is the key to all that anyway.
So by pre-work, you mean team members will self-assess?
Yeah, so the self-assessment and then the manager's assessment of that as well. Also crew, I should mention, kind of like slightly separate to the performance review. People can request at any point during the year at Finder, people can ask for 360 feedback there as well from peers or whoever it may be in the team as well. So they kind of get that regular pulse check of that going on as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, from an individual kind of perspective and that development piece, I guess we've still managed that fairly similarly to how we did previously as well.
Yeah, and what's your cadence on that? So how often do you have a review with Fred, and how often do you review your direct reports?
Yeah, so we have I guess you took it from the base of like regular weekly one-on-ones with the direct reports, and we have kind of team meetings then on a fortnightly basis. Obviously, there's constant discussion, like you mentioned, through all the other channels we have as well. But in terms of the individual and kind of team stuff, that's weekly, fortnightly, and then at any stage you can request a 360 feedback throughout the year. And we run the annual performance reviews currently at the business. Something that I guess we've spoken about for a while now is putting that as more of a shorter term regular thing, or maybe even including like a half-year version that's we have the regular 6-month catch-ups anyway, just on a bit of a review, but less formal, and kind of like formalizing that slightly more. So it's less about the full year experience, and you kind of have regular check-ins on that. But realistically, there's a manager training piece around this that we have at Finder as part of our managers commitment agreement, the MCA that we have here, around the manager having regular check-ins with their direct reports as well, so that they shouldn't ever get to a stage where it's kind of an annual thing. There's a surprise that comes up, if you're doing.
So what's regular? What do you mean by regular?
So, for example, if you're taking your annual review and you're breaking that down similarly how you would do it with an OKR, your annual goal might be to do something, and breaking that down into key results throughout the year about how you get there, and then tracking that throughout the year through your weekly catch-ups. You can liken it to that for an example, where there shouldn't be a, oh, well, we didn't touch on this throughout the full year and we've come another 12 months, or
right.
the frustration that's been found in the annual review that wasn't mentioned. You know, those kind of things should be uncovered throughout the year and the regular catch-ups anyway.
Yeah, and those one-to-ones, so important. Jamie, specific question for you. You talk about team members as crew. Somebody wants to know what's the nomenclature for managers and leaders?
I think it's just something that's built into the business for a long time. And Fred's always referred to the crew, you know, part of the whole rocket ship analogy we have. We're all part of the same crew here. Well, our one crew value, we're all one crew here. So whatever you have in terms of, you say leading from the top or the bottom, there is no top or bottom. We're all in this together. And the crew is just I guess it's a way of enforcing the one crew value, but it's the way that we've also taken that value and been able to use that and build it into the common vernacular and the part of the DNA, just baked it into daily life at Finder. Same thing with go live as a value. If someone wants to try a new piece of software, or, you know, we've got something we want to do, we go live. And that's
terrific. Going to jump in with some more questions that are coming in. There's a good one around misalignment. So can either of you think of any specific examples or causes? What causes misalignment of goals? I mean, under communication is going to be top of my list, but Van, is there anything that comes to your mind?
I had experience where different teams have their own ambitious goals, and they are so focused on achieving their goals and not realizing that some of the tasks that need to be achieved for other teams are also very important to unblock other teams to achieving their goals as well. So prioritization in terms of like what's important for your team and what's important for other teams, because you're not actually just working for whatever you're doing, like your job description. This is your job description. Like you have role and responsibility across the business. And you need to make sure that either you're helping, unblocking, or enabling some other teams to achieving the target as well. If this conversation didn't happen, or end of the quarters and everyone's sort of just trying to do their own things to achieving that numbers, it could ended up being a lot of the misalignment results at the end of the quarter, and might as well the whole company not hitting that target that we wanted.
Yeah, you both mentioned that you put stuff up on the wall, which we used to do when we were in an office as well. The old whiteboard with the golden metric or the daily result. We used to have bells that got rung. Now we've transferred all of that to Slack. But Jamie, in terms of misalignment of goals, what do you think are some of the number one reasons for failure?
Yeah, I think you mentioned communication there, which is obviously a key piece of it. I think that often people are saying the same thing in different ways and making sure that that's being delivered correctly and heard correctly. We have another one of our values again, be straight up. So it's about being able to give and receive that feedback in the right way, and knowing that it's coming from a positive place all the time. I think an example I can think of last year, putting together a hiring plan, and we had to obviously think about a budget. So you're working back from a budget and then the quarter in terms of when you can hire those roles versus the reality of when you will hire those roles. So that was a discussion in terms of, from a budgeting perspective, we have the capital or the revenue to actually be able to hire them versus the actual capacity we have from a talent team perspective when we will be able to hire them. And it was more just about aligning those so that people understood there was a budget date and a realistic date from capacity wise. So making sure that, again, those two dates were aligned and that people understood where they were coming from. That was an example of, it was we could have got that very wrong, but fortunately we didn't, and it worked out well in the end. And we've made sure that's a consistent thing, that we use a bit of an example to make sure that everyone knows what the dates mean and that everyone's kind of agreed upon them as well. It's not just they're set and then you have to be held to them. It's like you get to input into, is this realistic or not as well. So that communication piece around is very, very important.
You mentioned.
I have another example actually. One thing that like everyone understand on what the strategy is like for the business and strategy for each team, but when it's come to like executing, everyone just go back into doing their job without realizing that like these of the key tasks that they're doing on a day-to-day basis are not actually helping us achieving that strategy that we set at the beginning of the quarter. And this is actually one of the misalignment items that I have come across a lot in my career.
Yeah, I on that note, Van, I have on occasion responded to a question from a colleague where I don't necessarily know the answer with, does it make employment easier and more rewarding for everyone? So I just go straight back to the mission. You're looking for some advice, work out whether it makes employment easier and more rewarding for everyone, and that's the answer. But another question that's come in is about stage. At what stage of business development does it become important or even vital that you start managing and aligning and tracking goals? Van, you mentioned earlier at 14, you've started to split up into teams, and it's a big business now, 14 people. When did you become a big business? Was it?
So at DiviPay, we have sales team, and sales team have BDR, and also sales team. We have the revenue, head of revenue, customer success, marketing, product, engineering team, and we also have a go-to-market team also. So for 14 people.
But you're already, you've been tracking goals since you were 5
yep.
people? Yeah.
We track it in terms of the metrics is available on online for everyone to see, and it's being discussed and talked and tracked on a weekly basis from day one. We have all metrics in Mixpanel, all metrics on actually core metrics online, and we actually like print screen and Slack each other all the time. We actually like 20% now, 50% now throughout the week. It just like, it's become like a company culture.
Jamie, any thoughts around when businesses should start to, in terms of their development, does it become vital? Is it any major thoughts there?
Straight away, I think looking at Finder as an example, as an internet business, that was the first thing you track is, number of sessions, users, new users, all that kind of stuff. Like that was, again, baked into business from day one. I think people are so metrics driven in the company across whatever it is, whether it's to do with Google search stuff, whether it's performance on a campaign, whether it's the number of users that have signed up for the Finder app, whatever it may be. And again, similarly, we have TVs all around the office with dashboards and metrics for everything. So any piece of data you want, I'm pretty sure you could get it on a screen within 30 seconds.
But it was part of your DNA from day one.
I think it's just that the founders have built that into the business and into the way of working from the beginning, which is super healthy. I know obviously some companies struggle with that at times, but it's so important to get to think about that from early days.
I'm going to offer this as this observation as a way of answering it. When you look at the distribution of businesses, and this applies in any developed economy, everywhere that we've looked at the data, the number of companies that have X number of employees, there's a real tipping point around about 5 or 6 employees that a lot of businesses can't seem to get past. They get to 5 employees, 6 employees, and they get stuck. And I think it's a function of 2 things. I think one of it is that's sort of almost the size that one single founder, one single business owner, one single manager can sort of be in a very direct and meaningful relationship with each of those 5 or 6 people. And I think once you start to get beyond that, that person has to step back and understand how to manage teams without necessarily having that direct and meaningful contact. And I wonder if setting goals and tracking those goals and making sure everyone's on the same page and accountable for their goals is actually that inflection point that would allow more businesses to progress beyond that. But okay, that's fantastic. Thanks for that. Slightly off topic, but Clem's come back this week with another question. I think he's 4 from 4. Is there anything about face-to-face? Is there anything about office-based work? What do you miss most about that? Either of you.
You go, Van.
Face-to-face,
You're still in the office 3 days a week, though.
Yes,
so.
yeah, but some of our important meetings actually happening on the day that I'm working from home, and sometimes I do miss like the whiteboarding and getting like a post-it note, putting on a glass wall, and trying to prioritize some task. We can make that happen, but we don't need to, because there are a lot of digital tools that we can use.
I wanted to touch on that because I'm known as a bit of a whiteboard freak, and sometimes I can't think unless I've got a pen in my hand. But I have started to adopt some of those tools, some of those post-it tools and whiteboarding tools, and even Google Suite now has boards that you can use for that. So that's coming on. Jamie, anything quickly from you?
I'm with you on that one there. I think every wall here is a white wall in the whole office, and the tables are also writable and wipeable. So I've been doing stuff with a pen in my hand the whole time during this as well. But look, I personally, as a person, I love that human interaction piece. I think that's something I definitely missed and wanted more of during the, 14 weeks straight or whatever that we were locked down for in New South Wales during the height of the pandemic. I was certainly glad to get back in and be able to have more of that face-to-face interaction. Yeah. But I do think that it's been beneficial to everyone, whether you were previously fully remote or you're hybrid remote now or whatever you might be doing. I think just being able to connect with each other and understand and empathize with people a bit better during that, and because of the ways that they are working is very important. I think you touched on tech there. There's obviously tools like Miro that are good for whiteboarding and post-it noting and those kind of things. But sometimes you mentioned the water cooler chat, and you can set up other things like, there's coffee time, whatever it is on Slack, and donut time and those kind of things. But I think that for me personally, as an individual, I love that face-to-face interaction where I can. But I do also think it's been a healthy and beneficial thing for me to understand that those who aren't able to do that and be able to empathize and communicate better, hopefully, with those people as well.
But I imagine you've got people in your team, let alone the entire Finder crew, who you've never met in person.
In Manila, there's one person, but I'm very fortunate I've been able to meet the person in the US prior and bits like that. But yes, there's many people that I haven't met that I've hired over Zoom prior and during COVID and post-COVID, the height of it anyway in Australia. So I think that I think there's no substitute for it sometimes, but obviously we've got better at it, and hopefully we continue to do that as well, and don't let this the lowering of the pandemic and all the things that are happening there, hopefully we still continue to empathize with people and become better at that as a group.
Yeah, I feel like this has become part of the normal arrangement already. I don't feel like there's any further adjustment. I'm used to this working arrangement, and recruiting, hiring, interviewing people, they often ask, how are we, what's the working days arrangement look like? I just wanted to also mention that like last year, one of my closest colleagues, this is from previous company who I worked with on a daily basis in the different office, like never actually met in person.
Yeah.
So but he was like the closest colleague that I worked with on a daily basis. So it doesn't really matter these days, you're in the same office or not, you're in the same city or not. The business and the team leaders and individuals can make it work.
Yeah, look, we've opened 3 offices since the pandemic, New Zealand, Singapore and London. So we've obviously never had the opportunity to meet those colleagues, and we're actually all coming together within the New Zealand Australia bubble in August, but that'll be the first time that we get to meet some of those colleagues, but we've been working great together. So it can be done. As you say, Jamie, empathy and understanding is key, and there are increasingly tools available that help us do that. We've got a session coming up in a couple of episodes' time around making asynchronous employee engagement work, and there's a couple of questions come in today that will relate to that, and I think we'll be picking up on those thematics. But that's about all the time that we have today. So I want to finish. I appreciate both your remarks. Definitely check out DiviPay and Finder if you're not familiar with those businesses. There's great things going on there. So thank you to everyone for their Q&A. As usual, if we don't get to the question online on air, we're going to be collating all of those and providing responses in a blog with our new website, which I think is going live in the next couple of weeks. But otherwise, Jamie, that's just left to say thank you very much for your time, and Van, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ben.
See you guys.